Fresh off qualification and return from Pro Tour Valencia, he is playing Esper Stoneblade.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup, it's sort of the classic. Depending on who draws what, either deck can kind of play the control role or either deck can kind of play the aggro role. They both have a reasonable amount of creatures. They both have 12 exactly, actually. Both of which have Deathrite Shaman, but one of which is Stoneforge Mystic versus Tarmogoyf, a classic battle in Legacy.
We were going to have, going into this round, Tom Ross play in the feature match area. He is X-1 with Infect. Very cool deck. We did. I had some people on Twitter asking me about where we're going to do a deck tech. I believe we actually did a deck tech with him last week in St. Louis when he had a deep run with the same archetype.
Yeah.
By what I've heard out on the floor, I believe that Tom actually drew, which is why he's not on camera, which, if Tom has done the math correctly, means that we'll have a copy of Infect in the elimination rounds.
Yeah, and that's pretty awesome. Infect is not a deck you see too much in Legacy, but you do see a reasonable amount in Modern. The card Ink Moth Nexus is just an unbelievable Magic card. It's basically a 2/1 flyer, for the most part, because it has, Infect and deals poison damage, so it only has to hit 10 times. And when you have pump spells like Vines of the Vastwood, Invigorate, Berserk, you can just one-shot your opponent pretty easily, while also playing the shell that has things like Force of Will, Daze, and Protection backup.
And if you saw Tom's match on camera, you would have seen him be turn 1 discard spell, turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic for Umezawa's Jitte, turn 3 Lingering Souls, turn 4 equip and hit with Force of Will backup, and did not get to untap. So a very impressive showing.
I have no idea how that happened, but congratulations.
A lot of pump spells, a lot of Invigorates, and a Berserk.
Berserk is the key factor there because of the Lingering Souls, but it looks like Alex here, he mulliganed, if I am not mistaken. He was shuffling for quite some time, so.
Korey leads off with just an island.
Yeah, Alex's game plan here, I think, either an early Deathrite Shaman or an early Thoughtseize. A lot of times in this matchup from the Bug Delver side, you want to sandbag your discard spells so that once your opponent resolves a Stoneforge Mystic to get Batterskull, if you can strip the Batterskull out of their hand before they can put it into play, you take away the ability of the Esper Deathblade deck to actually, fight through the long game. Batterskull is one of their key components for doing so.
Yeah, you don't care too much about Umezawa's Jitte. You have a lot of ways to fight over that. And if you can tag the Batterskull, then not only do you answer that threat, but you also don't really have to worry about future copies of Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, I mean, these decks obviously are pretty similar. They both have disruptive spells. They both have Deathrite Shaman, very reasonable creatures. It looks like they're both even playing Liliana the Veil, although Korey McDuffie is playing some number of Jace the Mind Sculptors, whereas the Delver deck usually a little lighter on lands. They still run 20 versus the Deathblade's 22 or sometimes 23 or even 24, depending on how many Wastelands you want to play. But that's the reason why one of these decks has Jace the Mind Sculptor and one does not.
So you see Korey here take Delver of Secrets with the Thoughtseize, leaving Liliana in hand, even though Alex has the ability to cast it this turn off of the fetch land. Deathrite Shaman, Korey suspiciously with 1 blue mana available.
Yeah, I mean, he probably played it this way to, first of all, not get wastelanded on turn 1 by playing his island. And secondly, he has Spell Pierce at the ready and was just holding it up the entire time so far. And as you can see it peeking out the far left of his hand there, if Alex had gone for Liliana, it would have gotten Spell Pierce, but Alex can tend to kind of just sit on Deathrite, maybe eat the Thoughtseize end of turn, maybe eat the Delver to gain a few points of life, but overall just wanting to play around as many things as possible since he mulliganed, and he doesn't really have a lot of resources at his disposal other than mana.
And he's not really in an immediate rush to do anything right now. Korey's not putting him under any pressure, so he can afford to be a little more patient with how he deploys his threats.
Right. I mean, if Korey was to play a Stoneforge Mystic here, which I assume is going to be his play, probably fetch, play Stoneforge, go get Batterskull. He's still going to hold up the Spell Pierce and try to take, care of the Liliana before it actually forces him to sacrifice any creatures or discard any cards.
So Korey sacrificing Marsh Flats here, trying to determine which lane he wants to get. Goes and gets a basic Plains, trying to play around Wastelands. 4 copies, of course, in Alex's deck.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup can get pretty grindy since both players do have a fair game plan for the most part. The Bug Delver deck is a little bit better at disrupting the opponent than the Deathblade deck, since they usually have all these soft counter spells like Daze and sometimes Spell Pierce, although it doesn't look like Alex Hahn is playing any copies of Spell Pierce in his list. He's leaning way more on Hymn to Torok and Thoughtseize against all the control and combo matchups, as opposed to the oft-played soft counter and Spell Pierce.
So you see Korey here with the Stoneforge Mystic, goes and gets Batterskull. This is sort of phase one of the game you were describing before. Korey still with an island available, and Spell Pierce at the ready.
Yeah, now Alex desperately needs to draw some sort of discard spell here. Definitely needs to play his land pre-combat. He draws a second copy of Force Will, which incidentally turns on the first copy, but doesn't actually do what he needs it to do. But he is able to resolve Liliana here through the Spell Pierce by using the Force Will, pitching Force Will, and that's going to allow him to edict away the Stoneforge Mystic and ultimately keep the Batterskull at bay for at least 2 more turns.
Yep. Alex running dangerously low on resources at this point now, just 1 card in hand, but is able to get Liliana the Veil to resolve, uses the edict effect, takes out Korey's Stoneforge Mystic. Deathrite Shaman across for 1 point of damage.
Bang. It is not too terribly often correct for a Deathrite Shaman to attack. However, this is a prime example of the perfect time.
Nothing else going on.
Yeah, I mean, Korey has basically perfect information. I think they're both, pretty reasonable friends from Atlanta. They probably, talked a little bit before the event, maybe even know each other's deck list by heart. So if that's the case, Korey probably knows Alex does not have access to Spell Pierce, so there's literally no reason for Alex to, bluff the Spell Pierce when he could get in for a point of damage.
Mm-hmm. Korey is going to start his turn. It appears these Swords to Plowshares on the Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah. This is a little aggressive. It's a reasonable play if Korey has something like Snapcaster Mage in hand, which he wants to protect. However, there are so many more creatures in Alex's deck that are more daunting than a Deathrite Shaman, such as a Tarmogoyf off the top. And even though Korey does have a counterspell here, which he's likely going to use, which he does, the Liliana is going to tick up and kind of even out the resource advantage that Korey has on the game right now.
Yeah, this puts Korey in a position to rip a land here if he wants to be able to deploy his Batterskull. He does not.
Yeah, and awkwardly, he's probably going to discard the Batterskull here and play Vendilion Click end of turn to be able to threaten to kill the Liliana. So, actually, no, this is a heads-up play that I actually missed until just now. Click target himself, put Batterskull on bottom, discard a random card. Now you have an extra card for your Stoneforge Mist to get later in the game, which incidentally ends up discarding. However, you want to win the long game in this matchup.
Yeah, the Batterskull is such a critical piece of that is Korey. Now, both players empty-handed. Korey finishes off Liliana the Veil with Vendilion Click, adds Deathrite Shaman.
Alex here really needing a top deck, a series of top decks probably to stabilize. Something like Abrupt Decay to take care of the Vendilion Click will buy him a lot of time. But then he probably still needs to find an answer to Deathrite Shaman, since the Deathrite Shaman will be able to keep pace with the Tarmogoyf, both shrinking it and potentially gaining life by exiling creatures, or just racing by dealing him damage, as long as Korey's able to contain it, eventually, or find something to block it.
And Korey's deck has a lot more powerful draws in it, I would say, at this stage of the game. Most notably, Stoneforge Mystic and Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, and that is one of the advantages to playing Deathblade versus the traditional Delver deck, is that you sort of take away a lot of the soft counters and the chaff, so to speak, that go really well with the Delver of Secrets draws, in favor of things that help you win the late game, like Batterskull, like Jace the Mind Sculptor, more copies of removal spells and things of that nature. But here, they're both reasonably even on resources, thanks to the Liliana getting like a couple free cards out of it. But currently the board position stands. Alex is really far behind because he's drawn a couple lands where Korey was able to leverage his early card advantage to, apply pressure to the board in the form of Vendilion Click.
So we're going to see Alex here at the end of the turn sacrifice a fetch land, indicating that he's flooding out a little bit. When I do that, that means that I want the camera to pull back.
So Alex here just kind of fetching to thin his deck a little bit, hoping that the incidental points of life loss don't actually, affect him in the long run. He's also taking away his ability to shuffle off of Brainstorm, it's not a very common play for people who are like really seasoned in Legacy, but I feel like Alex, usually when someone's doing that, they're in desperation mode, or potentially like Alex has another fetch land in hand. They'll do that to fetch even because they have the extra land.
Yeah, they have a leftover here. So Delver of Secrets, the draw for Alex here. Korey looking through Alex's graveyard, deciding what he wants to remove with Deathrite Shaman. I'm assuming at this stage of the game, Korey rather is on pure offense and is just going to be attacking Alex's life total here, removing spells.
Yeah. Yeah, Alex
falls to 13.
The Deathrite Shaman picking cards that potentially can't get Snapcaster Mage, which I think is a reasonable decision. There are a lot of times when you're playing a Deathrite Shaman versus a deck that has blue mana in it and could potentially be playing Snapcaster Mage. It's better to just take the cards that may not blow you out. Like, for example, if there's an Abrupt Decay in Alex Han's graveyard, if there was a spot where Alex did not have any cards in hand, then that's a perfect time to just exile the Abrupt Decay immediately. But not only do you lose out on the 2 damage from the Deathrite Shaman, if your opponent does have a Snapcaster Mage, it can be kind of backbreaking in those scenarios. So I'm always a fan of, unless you know for a fact your opponent doesn't have it, you always go for the safe ones.
So Brainstorm the reveal here to Delver of Secrets, flipping over Insectile Aberration. Alex is casting the Brainstorm, and this is an interesting play from Korey as well. In response to the Brainstorm, Korey is wastelanding Alex's Verdant Catacombs, which is a curious play, but it does take away Alex's only way to shuffle his deck.
Yeah, and this is, as we were discussing earlier, a classic example of a potential Brainstorm lock. So Alex is going to draw 3 cards here, try to hit a big threat, but if it's 3 bricks and not a fetch land, he's basically going to be out of the game because his clock is not nearly as fast as Korey's. Even if the Vendilion Clique sits back on defense, the Deathrite Shaman will be able to continually peck away at Alex's life total. Looks like we drew a Brainstorm and 2 lands, so we can, I guess, potentially play the Brainstorm here, dig one more card deep. Hopefully we find something, but overall, it looks like Alex is just in a lot of trouble.
And I really like that play from Korey. There's a really good chance that there's 1 good card in the top 3. It's really unlikely that there's 3 good cards in the top 3. And the shuffle there very critical for Alex. And denying that a good spot when both players are flooding out in the wasteland, not terribly valuable.
Yeah, if Korey had not wastelanded when he did, it's very possible Alex could have drawn the Brainstorm, put back 2 lands, fetched, cast another Brainstorm, and then hit a couple of really good cards, and it could have changed the entire texture of this game.
So Korey offers up the trade with the Vendilion Clique. Alex accepts, and now we move on to Alex's turn, where he is shuffling.
Yeah, he decides to main phase fetch to get the land off top of his deck to give him 3 fresh cards, as opposed to just 2 fresh cards, since he already knew the Underground Sea was right on top.
Alex down to 6 here from all this fetching and Deathrite Shaman and Vendilion Cliques. Not a lot of time to find an answer to this Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, I mean, if he draws an Abrupt Decay right here, he's actually just right back in the game, though. Looks like he drew Hymn to Torok, Delver of Secrets, and Brainstorm.
So not an ideal look here for Alex here, deciding whether or not he wants to cast Delver of Secrets this turn or try again with Brainstorm. If he's feeling very desperate here, he may keep Brainstorm in hand. If he feels he has 1 more turn, he will leave Brainstorm and try again next turn. He feels he has enough time and deploys the Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable conclusion that you're going to end this exchange at 2 life because the Deathrite Shaman gets to untap. He's going to flip his Delver, hopefully Brainstorm into 1 card deeper, finding an Abrupt Decay to take care of the Deathrite Shaman, but Korey just drew a Force of Will.
So we know about the Brainstorm on top of the deck. That will flip Delver of Secrets into Insectile Aberration. And now Alex, looking at 3 cards here. Korey with a hard cast Force of Will. And that should do it.
Yeah, that locks it up.
So Korey McDuffie using the Force of Will there. Very astute play, as is possible. The card that Alex is looking for there is Abrupt Decay, which Force of Will provides no utility against. And Korey McDuffie quickly up a game against Alex Han.
So looking at the sideboard from Alex Han's side, we have a couple more removal spells in 2 Disfigure and a Dismember, potentially Spell Pierce, depending on if he wants to be a little more disruptive towards things like Jace or like early discard spells. But for the most part, I think he just wants to be the aggro deck. I'm not keen on him to Torok in this matchup because the Deathblade decks are able to protect their hand pretty easily with Brainstorm, and the likelihood of you being able to him to Torok away a Batterskull in the early turns of the game is pretty low. And you really want pinpoint discard like Thoughtseize in that scenario. And so I foresee him boarding out some number of him to Toroks, maybe some number of Force of Wills, though Force of Will can be pretty awesome when your opponent's trying to do everything possible to resolve a turn 4 Jace. But I know that Alex has to figure out a way to just apply pressure early with Delver and Tarmogoyf, and then slowly disrupt the things Korey's doing while trying to build more of a board presence.
Over on Korey's side, we have a Sword of Feast and Famine, a Liliana of the Veil, a Zealous Persecution, 2 Abrupt Decays, a Vendilion Click, a Detention Sphere, a Thoughtseize, 2 Meddling Mages, 3 Rest in Pieces, and 2 Flusterstorms. I like the additional Thoughtseize, I like the additional Detention Sphere, I like the additional Vendilion Click, the 2 Abrupt Decays, and Sword of Feast and Famine feels to me like an upgrade in this matchup over Umezawa's GT.
Yeah, I agree. Although both Detention Sphere and Sword of Feast and Famine, while being pretty good, just having a lot of different kind of targets to hit. For example, Alex has shown the Liliana already, Liliana being a key card in this matchup. But the fact that Abrupt Decay exists means that you're never really safe. And since Alex is playing 4 of them, it's pretty likely he's going to find 1 or 2 as long as he's pondering and brainstorming.
So you're not a fan of Detention Sphere here because it's especially liable to Abrupt Decay?
Yeah, I mean, you can try to overload their Abrupt Decays with just a ton of Deathrite Shamans and Stoneforge Mystics, but the problem comes when you're just needing your spell to deal with something. For example, if it was Vindicate, I would 100% bring it in because it deals with Liliana permanently, it deals with Tarmogoyf permanently. But there's always those situations where you're not sure if your opponent has Abrupt Decay or not. So, like for example, I don't know whether or not I should attack with this creature because if he Abrupt Decays and gets back Tarmogoyf to block, I'm in a lot of trouble. And it just sort of changes how you play when you're playing scared. And I feel like if you ever cast Detention Sphere, you kind of just have to play scared for the rest of the game.
Yeah. And you see Alex going through, we got a little quick flash of his sideboard there. Looks like he took out a lot of his counter spells. The Spell Pierces and Force of Wills appear to be in the sideboard, which is very reasonable. We see those cards come out a lot of the time in honest matchups. It looks like Alex has gone to his sideboard and brought in 3 copies of Golgari Charm. I would assume to try to fight over True Name Nemesis and potentially Vendilion Click as well.
And also Detention Sphere.
Yeah, it does feel like a lot of copies of that sort of effect. There's
Right.
only so many non-attacking, non-removal spell type of cards that I feel that Alex can play in his deck without potentially diluting it too much.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also potentially brings in Corrosion Grip for similar reasons because a Resolve Batterskull is really tough for his deck to beat. I could foresee him losing just by drawing way too many copies of things like Golgari Charm and Corrosion Grip and Abrupt Decay and not actually presenting threats for Core to deal with and trying to be the control deck when his deck's not really set up to be a control deck because he does not have a late game. He has no Jaces, he has no Batterskull, nothing to really punish Korey if the game goes long. So taking that role as the Bug Delver player, I think is just a complete misconception on the role.
Yeah, very important to remain aggressive because, as you say, time is not on his side.
Yeah, I mean, the longer you give the Deathblade time to find Jaces, find removal, find Snapcaster Mages, they're just going to grind you out of the game. So I'm not really sure if Alex's plan is going to work. He could just draw the aggressive side of his deck, like 3 creatures and, a Hymn to Torok and a Thoughtseize, and then the game just ends on turn 5. So.
Yeah. And even Batterskull in the games that go really deep. We think about Jace being the card that locks it up, but as you mentioned, Batterskull, not easy for Alex's deck to get off the table once it's there. And that's another, expensive card that's very challenging for him to beat once it's in play. It doesn't have to just be through Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, it looks like we may be short a card here. Alex counting his deck multiple times to see cards maybe sticking together. We'll get that sorted out and get the game started pretty soon. So I think we're a good 60, couple cards just stuck together. So.
Yep. Everything looks good. Totally reasonable for these players to want to err on the side of caution with potentially a top 8 berth on the line here.
Yeah, a lot of potential money here on the line for Alex Hahn versus Korey McDuffie. 2 friends battling out of Atlanta.
Are you sure they're friends?
No, but they're both from Atlanta, so
I don't know.
I just kind of assume they're friends. Neither of them look very happy, though.
I've never counted out my friend's deck. I'm just saying.
No, I don't know if he counted his deck. I think he may have. I think Korey may have accidentally dropped a card or something.
Oh, okay,
And they were
sure.
just checking to make sure it had 60, and there was 60. If Korey had pile shuffled him like 3 pile, hey, you got 59 cards here, bro. Like, yeah, sure, not friends.
Alex here leading off the action with a Verdant Catacombs into Underground Sea.
Yeah, a lot of potential plays here for Alex. Obviously, we haven't taken a good look at his hand, but. Thoughtseize is a card that I usually like to wait on early on because you want to hit the Batter Skull specifically. So this is likely a Ponder or a Deathrite Shaman. Well, count me wrong.
Do you think that changes the equation if your hand's really soft to Stoneforge Mystic, for example? They might be able to protect it with Brainstorm if you wait, and then, of course, by the time the second turn rolls around, they're able to actually just cast it outright.
Sure, but if, like, for example, if Korey shows 2 copies of Stoneforge Mystic here, then you're just actually dead. Well, not actually dead. You're in a lot of trouble. We'll put it that way. And there we go.
So 2 Stoneforge Mystics, the Sword of Feast and Famine we alluded to during sideboard, Thoughtseize, and 3 lands, Polluted Delta, Tundra, and Swamp.
It's possible Korey didn't actually side out Umezawa's Jite, but instead just opted to have a 3rd equipment to tutor for. This matchup is super grindy on occasion, and so having that extra equipment to be able to go get with Stoneforge Mystic in the late game could be like really important.
Yeah, we see these decks, a lot of the time it feels like the game plan is I'm going to allow your Stoneforge Mystic to resolve and then actually fight over the equipment in your hand. Being really redundant there can be valuable if the game drags out for a very long time.
Yeah, if Alex had gone with my play, there's a potential that Korey actually just Thoughtseizes him on turn 1, takes Alex's Thoughtseize, and then Stoneforges on turn 2, and then we're in a lot of trouble. Here, he can, I don't know, maybe take 1 Stoneforge Mystic to kind of stem the bleeding, but if Korey just leads with either Swamp or Polluted Delta, it's going to be pretty bad for Alex because he has a Wasteland or 2 in hand, and he's not going to really keep Korey off of Stoneforge Mystic too easily.
And so Alex decides to take one of the 2 Stoneforge Mystics.
Swords of Plowshares from Korey here off the top. Going to be pretty good if Alex ends up getting one of his premier creatures onto the table. Tarmogoyf and Delver Seekers being the ones that Korey should be most afraid of.
And you see a pretty rough hand here for Alex here. Wasteland, Hinatorak, 2 copies of Golgari Charm, and a Ponder. This is sort of what we were talking about earlier. It's important for Alex to remain pretty threat dense, and here he is with a really reactive hand.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved for Alex to be boarding in Golgari Charm if he's boarding out things like Hinatorak, but the more cards like Golgari Charm that you're bringing in, you're not making your deck function the way it's supposed to function. Your early Delver Secrets, sure, they still get flipped off of Golgari Charm, but you have these things like Golgari Charm instead of like Force of Will or Daze or something like that. And I mean, you just have to really just pick and choose your battles. He's picking the battle of beating True Name Nemesis when he's going to end up losing the battle to Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah.
So, and the problem is that there's not too many cards in Legacy that beat both Stoneforge Mystic and True Name Nemesis. For example, Engineer Plague. Massacre being the only one that I can really think of that does a good job against both. But a lot of True Name decks don't play planes or will effectively not fetch planes in order to play around Massacre.
So Korey decides on the Hinatorak, allows Alex to keep Ponder. Clearly, Korey's somewhat concerned about Alex just being a black swap and hitting him and allowing him to Ponder instead.
Yeah, Alex drawing a Liliana here, needing a land in order to cast it that taps for black. Sees one on top along with a Tarmogoyf and what looked like a Deathrite Shaman. So this Ponder actually really, really good for Alex. He's going to be able to hit his land drops and hopefully start casting some interactive spells with Korey over the next few turns.
Wasteland the play for Alex and no further play.
I feel like Korey's play here should just be cast Stoneforge Mystic, go get Batter Skull, hope Alex didn't peel like K-Grip or Thoughtseize. You have to actually apply pressure to the people who are sitting back on so many reactive spells. The downside here is that if he does that, the Liliana will be able to edict him and put him in kind of an awkward situation where he's kind of stuck with a Batter Skull in hand with no real way to interact with the Liliana. But he doesn't really have a whole lot of other options. He has a Deathrite Shaman in hand that he just drew, I believe. The Swords of Plowshares, which is obviously reactive. and the Sword of Feast and Famine.
So Korey here debating between the Deathrite Shaman and the Stoneforge Mystic, goes with Deathrite Shaman. I wonder if at all if this play was possibly informed by the Wasteland that Alex played that turn instead of the Bayou.
I mean, it's possible. I think it would have been the other way around, though. Like, I think because he played the Wasteland, you have to just assume that your opponent didn't hit Black Source Liliana as his, 2 cards off draw step and the Ponder. But, I mean, there's a reasonable chance that it happened, and obviously it did. So
now with Deathrite Shaman down, this opens the door potentially for Stoneforge Mystic. Korey resolves it, goes and gets Batterskull out of the deck, and now Alex under a lot of pressure to find answer to Stoneforge right now, or Batterskull will be deployed, and that's a very challenging card for most bug decks to beat.
Yeah, and Korey here actually taking the safer line of playing the Stoneforge Mystic second after the Deathrite Shaman, and now Alex doesn't really have a straight-up removal spell for the Stoneforge Mystic, which means Batterskull is going to come online before the Liliana is going to be able to take care of the Stoneforge Mystic.
So Alex in a lot of danger of this game getting kind of taken out from under him before it even really starts.
Yeah, but he is playing Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf this turn, which is a reasonable board presence against a Batterskull. So I think the Tarmogoyf is pretty significantly sized because of the artifact in the yard, as well as a couple creatures now, an instant. So I think he's 5/6. Yeah.
Looking at a 5/6 Tarmogoyf and
potentially 6/7 next turn if he decides to Edict with the Liliana. So just missing Enchantment and Tribal, both of which we've seen in graveyards today.
So Alex passing the turn, and Korey with Swords to Plowshares in his hand here, which feels like a pretty significant card to have here with Alex trying to batten down the hatches a little bit with this Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just taking care of Tarmogoyf right now means that you don't have to use a mana later on. And I think he drew a Jace the Mind Sculptor last turn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
If he draws a land, it's possible he just plays Jace, decides to bounce Deathrite Shaman, attack Liliana for 1. And I think that puts you in a very good spot. You can discard whatever the other card in your hand is, I think. Although that may leave him... Actually, that might end up being a pretty bad place, just because he needs to draw the land, and then he'll play it. He plays the Swords of Plowshares, only has 2 cards left, draws, plays land, Jace, so.
Loses the Batterskull in that scenario, potentially. But
right.
Korey with Swords of Plowshares at the end of the turn on Tarmogoyf.
Once again, if you are reasonably confident that you will be in the top 8, please bring your deck up to the stage.
And we'll move over to Korey's turn momentarily, where he has a lot of big draws here. A 4th land could enable Jace as this turn, and a removal spell would be valuable as well, clearing out that Deathrite Shaman. Korey finds Counterspell.
Counterspell pretty big here, actually. Now he has the option to Counterspell something or put Batterskull into play. He doesn't really want to discard the Jace the Mind Sculptor to Liliana, though, so this is going to be kind of a tough spot. It looks like Alex drew Abrupt Decay for the turn, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And so Alex could potentially go Abrupt Decay or Stoneforge. That forces Korey to flash in Batterskull immediately, and then he's able to Edict away the Germ token effectively, like, infinite time walking Korey, because the Batterskull is kind of stuck in play with nothing to equip to, and it's going to take forever to bounce back and then recast.
Yep. All well and good, but we know that the Jace in Korey's hand has the potential to blow this game wide open if Alex takes a line of play that slow.
However, the Wasteland will keep him off of for at least 2 more turns.
So here's Abrupt Decay on the Stoneforge Mystic. We're going to respond. Korey here with a Stoneforge Mystic activation. Plays Batterskull.
Yeah, gets the Germ token. Stoneforge hits the bend. I can't imagine Liliana's going to tick up. I think you just have to take care of the Germ token, Wasteland, and then attack for 1. Wasteland feels really important here, not only to keep the Batterskull kind of in limbo, but also to make sure that a Jace off the top does not destroy you.
It's going to pass the turn. Big risk here. Okay.
Well, he decides to do an upkeep, which actually is a little bit better than doing it main phase, because if your opponent has Brainstorm, you'd much rather them do it on their upkeep as opposed to in response to your Wasteland at the end of turn.
Sure, this is a marginal thing, but yeah, technically better to run it this way.
Yeah.
So Korey's going to take the opportunity, return Batter Skull to his hand, draws Deathrite Shaman, passes the turn back.
Yeah, I really am hoping we get to see dueling Deathrite Shamans in a minute. That's my favorite game in the whole world.
Brainstorm the draw. Looks at Delver, Secrets, Crozan Grip, and Underground Sea.
Yeah, probably going to put back the Golgari Charm on top since he knows, or since Korey knows that it's there. Probably just going to play the land, play the Delver, hold up Deathrite Shaman to ping Korey for 2.
And he does, as you recommend, Delver, Secrets the play. Korey draws Source of Plowshare, seems critical here, getting that Deathrite Shaman off the table.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Delver might actually end up being more of a threat. Since Korey does have access to his old Deathrite Shaman in hand, he could just play that past turn, wait to see what Alex flips, maybe he reveals something a little better. But since he already knows the Golgari Charm, there's not been a shuffle effect since early on in the game when he was Thoughtseize. So I guess he can kind of assume that the top card's going to be Golgari Charm since that's known information already. And that prevents Alex from gaining an extra 2 life by flipping the Delver. So.
And most importantly, I think Korey also needs to get an open opportunity to get a mana creature in play to have the potential to resolve Jace the Mind Sculptor. Alex's Deathrite Shaman prevents him from doing that, as he can respond to that activation by using the Deathrite Shaman to make mana.
Sure.
But we will see how Korey wants to use this Source of Plowshare, I'm sure, momentarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not a bad point by taking care of the Deathrite Shaman. That gives every land off of Korey's top of the deck, makes it a live draw to cast the Jace. But if he leaves Alex's Deathrite Shaman in play, you know, you can always exile the land in response to your opponent's Deathrite Shaman activation, which will effectively invalidate theirs.
So Korey, you can tell, definitely mulling this over. This feels very close.
Yeah, if he's planning on doing that, I don't love letting your opponent untap with their Deathrite Shaman. So
that feels to me an indicator that he's planning on plowing the Insectile Aberration.
Yeah, I mean, it is a faster clock, so it makes sense, but it's a little, discouraging that if he draws a land, it's going to be a feel-bad moment because he could have potentially played Jace and just bounced the Delver Secrets. So, I don't know. I think it's a coin flip. He is at 14, and his Deathrite can kind of contain Alex's Deathrite to preserve his life total, but it's going to be a really mana-intensive battle, and he's behind on mana.
Yeah. So, Alex passes the turn back, and now we're going to see dueling Deathrites. Alex attempts to shoot for 2, and Korey responds by removing the Sword of Plowshare, shooting Alex for 2, and more critically preventing 2 damage to himself.
Yeah, so Alex here with the 2 very reactive spells that we've discussed at length already with Golgari Charm and Corrosion Grip. Both cards that help fight against Batter Skull as well as True Name Nemesis, but neither really doing a whole lot against either Deathrite Shaman or Jace the Mind Sculptor.
So Alex, with the shields down now, free reign for Korey to potentially make mana with his Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah.
He has drawn Liliana the Veil as well this turn, so this could be a big turn for Korey coming up.
Yeah, I feel like Korey won the Deathrite Shaman game. I don't know.
Yep.
Now he's contemplating playing the Jace here because if it gets dazed, he's going to have a really awkward situation. But you have to assume that if your opponent flipped the Golgari Charm, they don't have a dazed 1 card down because the Golgari Charm's not actually doing anything right now, right?
Right.
It's a very reactive card, whereas dazed, even if your opponent can see it coming, you can use it, proactively to either prevent them from doing certain things or, things of that nature.
So Korey lands Liliana the Veil here, uses it to edict Alex, sending the Deathrite Shaman to the graveyard, passes the turn. Alex's hand, very reactive right now, Golgari Charm, plus Crozan Griffin is now just drawn Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, so he can opt to Abrupt Decay the Liliana or Deathrite Shaman. Personally, with his hand as reactive as it is, none of his cards are actually going to do anything. But, if he doesn't take care of the Liliana now, the Liliana is just basically going to free roll the rest of his hand, and then he's eventually going to lose to Batter Skull.
So now the coast may be clear for Jace the Mind Sculptor on an uncontested board here for Korey, and that's a winning recipe and legacy for many years now.
Yeah, not a bad card that there, Jace the Mind Ringer brain smuggler.
And it shows up, and we'll see how Korey wants to handle this. He brainstorms this turn. He finds 2 more lands, which provides him additional mana sources, potentially allowing him to deploy Batterskull next turn as well.
Right, and he also drew a Brainstorm and a blue mana, so he can actually put Batterskull on the top of his deck, or, I mean, he can put anything back on top of his deck if he wants to, because he has the potential to cast Brainstorm in response to any discard spell Alex could play. But it's probably a better play to just play it safe, leave the Batterskull on top, maybe even have the Brainstorm underneath it, since those are the 2 cards you want to make sure that you have over the coming turns, assuming the worst case scenario happens.
So Underground see the play for Korey to finish up the turn here, and here's another Abrupt Decay. Not that these 1-for-1 exchanges are bad for Alex necessarily, but it does sort of highlight the problem of too much reaction and not enough proactive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the Delver decks just have those kind of draws, though, where they draw way too much air and not enough gas. And right now, Alex, I think it actually just feels accentuated. I don't think he actually cited out any of his creatures, So he basically just replaced cards like Daze and maybe Force of Will for things like Corrosion Grip and Golgari Charm, which are reasonable choices, because Force of Will can be really bad at some points in the game, and Daze can be really bad at some points in the game, whereas Corrosion Grip and Golgari Charm fight very specific problems that your deck has, like True Name Nemesis, like Batterskull.
So Korey here brainstorming again with Jace, and now with a pretty powerful hand here, involving Stoneforge Mystic, I believe, Counterspell.
Yeah, we're playing it super safe now with playing Stoneforge Mystic instead of just jamming Batterskull, because if Alex had, we played around it a couple turns ago when Alex had the potential to have Daze for the Jace or the Liliana or what have you, so looks like we fail to find or get Jitte.
So Korey finds Jitte with Batterskull already in hand.
Yeah, and the Sword of Feast of Famine being discarded earlier, I believe, to the Liliana of the Veil.
Ponder the draw for Alex.
This is going to be a tough battle for Alex to come back from, seeing as Korey has an active Jace and a counterspell in hand to go along with that Batterskull. So Alex needing some really key top decks, but he does have the Corrosion Grip to take care of the Batterskull, but...
Well, for now, as you see Vendilion Click here at the end of Alex's turn from Korey.
Yeah, and that's going to probably be taking the Corrosion Grip from Alex, which is going to leave the Batterskull to do God knows what.
He does select the Crozan Grip.
So we get a free draw. Maybe it's good, maybe not. Looks like a land to me.
Bayou off the Vendilion Click.
Yeah.
And Alex is going to take this opportunity to Golgari Charm away the Vendilion Click.
Not quite a True Name Nemesis, but still an annoyance, to say the least. But I think the real problem here is just whenever Jace is active in a fair matchup for more than one turn, it's really hard to come back from. I think this is the 3rd time I've seen it today where just a resolved Jace being active to brainstorm more than one time usually ends the game. Like, sometimes you have to tick up to make sure your guy doesn't die to, or make sure your Jace doesn't die to, a creature or whatever. But now Alex is just a Ponder and a couple of lands against a Batterskull, Jace, and the active Deathrite Shaman next turn.
Alex has had a lot of 1-for-1 trades, but really hard to trade 1-for-1 against Jace. So Alex leading off the turn here with a Ponder. Korey says that's fine. Looks like Crozan Grip, Ponder, and Brainstorm.
He's going to prolong the game a little more. This is the dance. The Ponders find the answers. The answers just keep you from dying for a turn or two more, while Jace grinds you to dust.
So Alex chooses not to shuffle. Plays the 3rd land and does nothing else.
Yeah, almost certainly going to Corrosion Grip this, but I mean, there's no real reason to do it now since the Corrosion Grip has split second. But Alex, being the gentleman that he is, just go ahead and breaking it off and make sure that, nothing bad happens. But
it was always Jitte the draw, set aside earlier from a Brainstorm, and Korey with just a lot of gas in his hand at this point.
More lands, more creatures, more cards in hand, more planeswalkers. Resource advantage at its finest. I think this is a prime example why Wizards of the Coast will never unban Jason Modern.
Oh, sure. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I would be surprised.
Yeah. Alex here just checking his glasses to make sure that the board state is as bad as he thinks it is.
I think it's actually...
It might be a little worse.
I think the dollar sign on Jace, the price tag on Jace might be a bigger factor than anything else, but yes. Wizards with a lot of reasons not to touch that card. Flooded Strand, the play for Korey.
I think unbanning in Modern would actually just make the price go back up, right?
Well, that's what I mean.
Sure. All right, well, an empty Thoughtseize, if you will, but an empty heart for Alex Hahn as well.
Now Korey still can afford to just sort of sit on his heels here.
Yeah.
Brainstorm the play for Alex.
This has to be a counterspell bait because Brainstorm just has the potential to end up being more than one spell. And it gives Alex something to actually do with the land stuck in his hand, so.
Yeah, I like that counterspell from Korey. You see him deploy it. And now we're going to start to see Korey get a little more proactive.
Yeah, he drew Vendilion Click, I believe, last turn off of his Jace, so it looks like he's probably going to just jam that into play, target himself, probably get rid of one of his extra cards. Maybe, I guess it was a Jite. I don't know if he actually wants to get rid of that, but we'll see.
So we'll see what Korey wants to do here at the end of the turn.
All right.
Vendilion Click. Wants to keep the Jite in his hand. Brainstorms again with Jace.
Drew a Tar Pit, which is nice, just more fuel for the fire.
Accelerates the clock a little bit too.
Yeah.
Nice for Korey and nice for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this feels like the point in the match where the cat's just toying with the mouse, you know?
Stoneforge reveals Jite that Korey has set aside with a Brainstorm from Jace. Just every little edge.
Max value, baby. Never kill, never attack. All value all the time. Only play one way. Play hard.
Jite comes into play. Is equipped, and now here they come.
He equipped the wrong Stoneforge Mystic, but I don't think they're going to call it.
Yeah. One of them summoning Signet, one of them isn't. It's not a huge deal here.
It's possible the verbal communication was equip the one that doesn't have summoning sickness,
So Alex now draws. I believe we know this is a Ponder. Fetches.
Yeah, and I mean, this is only game 2, and these 2 games have taken roughly 40-ish minutes, and both games I felt like Korey was really far ahead most of the game.
Yeah.
And it just shows you kind of how these little incremental advantages can build up over time out of these Deathblade decks, but also it shows you that even though the deck is really solid and has a lot of really powerful cards, it takes forever to win.
Yeah.
And Korey is not playing slow.
No,
you know?
he has had some decisions, and he's played methodical in a couple of places,
Yeah.
but he's certainly not taking an unreasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if this was a Magic Online clock, he would probably still have at least 10 minutes left on his clock, maybe a little more, you know. And both players here, just a lot of shuffling, a lot of decisions, a lot of brainstorms, and this is just kind of how these fair matchups in Legacy go sometimes, because both players have so many decisions to make every single turn. I feel like this Ponder is going to be a concession, and
yeah,
there it is.
Alex has had enough here. So Korey McDuffie wins 2 games to 0. Pretty commanding fashion. Esper Deathblade over Bug Delver. Korey now, hopefully, his tiebreaker's